All right, hello everyone. Just give me a second to get these comment section up. Yeah, for some reason, my stream looks very different on my end than it will probably look for you guys. All right, let me try shutting down YouTube and bringing it back up again. Well, it says I'm live, so my stream looks very... There we go. Alright, welcome to another Slowdown Sunday. I thought I was going to be a little late because of a late lunch that I had. My dad and my stepmom decided to celebrate Easter this Sunday instead of last Sunday for like scheduling reasons. So I was over there for a late lunch, like 2 p.m. lunch, which is very late for me. But anyways, since I completely forgot to do a poll for what we're going to be reading today, I decided to take a request from Mike's Total Dragon channel, Mike's Total Dragon channel. For some reason, I want to say Mike's Dragon Total channel. I don't know why, but yeah, I'm taking his suggestion, and today we're going to be reading the War of the Worlds radio script from October 30th, 1938. So I think this passes as not under copyright because it's been almost a century since this was done. So we're going to just get right on into it. This is I got this from wellsnet.com, the radio transcript. This was posted on October 9th, 2013. So if you guys notice any differences or think that this is not a good script, then maybe next week I can find a better script that we can read from. So let's read the editor's note real quick. Editor's note. In marking the 75th anniversary of the War of the Worlds broadcast, WellsNet offers a transcript of the October 30th, 1938 broadcast as heard on the Columbia Broadcasting System. It was performed by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air from a script by Howard Koch and based on the novel by H.G. Wells. The broadcast can be heard on the WellsNet radio page. Okay, so they do have audio of this too. But we're not here for the audio. I'm going to do my best to deliver this story as well as I can. Announcer. The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Music, Mercury Theater, musical theme. Alright, announcer. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and stars of these broadcasts, Orson Welles. Alright, and here's Welles. We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings bruised themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their domination over the small spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds as ourselves are the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better. The war scarce was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crossley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on their radios. I find it so strange that they even outright say at the beginning that this is an adaptation of an H.G. Wells novel, and then they still went crazy. Like, did they not know, or did they miss the part where this was a performance and it's not an actual alien invasion? Alright, announcer. For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by wind of light gale force. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We now take you to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown New York, where you will be entertained by the music of Ramon Roquello and his orchestra. Announcer 3. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza in New York City, we bring to you the music of Ramon Roquello and his orchestra, with a touch of the Spanish. Ramon Roquello leads off with La Comparsita. Blah. Announcer 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mountain Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observations and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Ramon Roquello, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York. Again, how did they not pick up that this was a performance? Like, who the hell would interrupt a very important announcement like that for just music? Alright, announcer 3. Now, a tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust. Ramon Roquello and his orchestra. Announcer 2. Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on the event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Pearson Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to the music of Ramon Roquello and his orchestra. Announcer 2. We are now ready to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey. Doom. Phillips. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips, speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I am standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through a giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions? Pearson. Any time, Mr. Phillips? Phillips. Professor, will you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope? Pearson. Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk, quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest to Earth, in opposition, as we call it. Phillips. In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson? Pearson. Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips, although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet. Phillips. Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars. Pearson. I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1. Phillips. And yet, how do you account for those gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals? Pearson. Mr. Phillips, I cannot account for it. Phillips. By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth? Pearson. Approximately 40 million miles. Phillips. Well, that seems a safe distance enough. Off mic. Thank you. Pause. Phillips. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience? Pearson. Certainly, Mr. Phillips. All right, Phillips. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read to you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars? Pearson. Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits. Phillips. Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carl Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio. Rover Mills Company. I wonder if that was where the broadcast originally happened. Announcer 2. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News, Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home comes a special announcement from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of 700 miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and will have our commentator, Carl Phillips, give you a word description as soon as he can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Martet in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millett and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music. And answer 2. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Yay! Wee, 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 wee. Phillips. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carl Phillips again at the Millmouth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree it must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson? Pearson, off mic. What's that? Phillips. What would you say? What is the diameter? Pearson. About 30 yards. Phillips. About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please? Policeman. One side there, one side. Phillips. While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Wilmot, the owner of the farm here. He might have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmot, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? Step closer, please, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Wilmot. Wilmot. Well, I was listening to the radio. Phillips. Closer and louder, please. Wilmot. Pardon me. Phillips. Louder, please, and closer. Wilmot. Yes, sir. While I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing, that professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half. Phillips. Yes, Mr. Wilmot. Then what happened? Wilmot. As I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfways. Phillips. Yes, Mr. Wilmot. And then you saw something? Wilmot. Not first off. I heard something. Phillips. And what did you hear? Wilmot. A hissing sound. Like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rockets. Phillips. Then what? Wilmot. Turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was asleep and dreaming. Phillips. Yes? Wilmot. I seen a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo. Something smacked the ground. Knocked me clear off my chair. Phillips. Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmot? Wilmot. Well, I I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of rifled. Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Wilmoth. Thank you. Wilmoth. Want me to tell you some more? Phillips. No, that is quite all right. That's plenty. Phillips. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Mr. Wilmoth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in a field in back of us. Police are trying to rope off the roadway leading to the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spot on the pit where the object's half buried. Some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge, their silhouettes standing out against the green sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. The policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Oh, Professor Pearson. Pearson. Yes, Mr. Phillips. Phillips. Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing? Pearson. Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface. Phillips. I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor? Pearson. I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere. No! Usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, of cylindrical shape. Phillips. Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow. Voices. She's moving! Look, the darn thing's unscrewing! Keep back there! Keep back, I tell you! Maybe there's men in it trying to escape. It's red hot. They're burning but they'll burn to a cinder. Keep back there. Keep those idiots back. Sudden cling. Voices. She's off! The top's loose! Look out there! Stand back! Phillips. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone, or something, I can see peering out of that black hole. 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Phillips. Good heavens! Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a grey snake. Now it's another large one, and another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped, with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute. Announcer. We are now bringing you to an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmoth Farm, Grover's Mills, New Jersey. We now return you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mills. They just keep re-announcing stuff. It's kind of weird. Did they do that in radios back then? Phillips. Hold on. I think I got an eyelash. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmot's garden. From here, I can get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk. As long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. I can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole, a flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait, something's happening. Phillips, a humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror. It leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame. No, baby, no. I know I love you too, but no, you can't jump on the computer. You need to go away. Come on. Alright, Phillips. Now the whole field's caught fire. The woods, the barn, the gas tank of automobiles. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way. About 20 yards to my right. I'm going to take a small pause. I'm starting to get a little runny in the nose. I don't know, the longer I read this, the funnier I find that people thought this was actually happening. Announcer. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mills. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Engeldorfer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars were undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. We now continue with our piano interlude. Announcer 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mills by telephone. Just a moment. Oh my goodness, you two. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in the field east of the village of Grover's Mill. Their bodies burnt and distorted beyond any possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey. Smith. I have been requested by the government of New Jersey to take place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you. And answer 2. You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith, commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures are unleashing their deadly assault, crawling back into the pit, and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to rescue the bodies and extinguish the fire. Combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames with which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mills, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you... Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his experience of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by direct wire. Professor Pearson. Ding ding. Ding ding. Pearson. Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purpose here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It is my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray. Answer 2. Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carl Phillips, I liked doing his voice, has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now, here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. Office of the Director of National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia stationed outside Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here is a bulletin from State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit, and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations. McDonald. We have received a request from the militia at Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning our facilities to the state militia at Trenton. Announcer 2. We now take you to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey. This broadcast is actually going by really quick. I hope this is the full broadcast. Captain. This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object which lies in a pit directly below our position is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry. Without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things Things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the light. It looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River, probably fires started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. An quick thrust, and it will all be over. Now wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmouth farm. Several thousand armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. There's something moving. Solid metal. Kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why, it's standing on legs. Actually, rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees, and the searchlights are on it. Hold on. Announcer. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by any army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders of Mars. 120 known survivors. The best strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burnt to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey, and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from New York to Philadelphia continued, except routing some of the trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Philadelphia, Camden, and Trenton. It is estimated to twice their normal population. At this time, martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. We take you now to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior. Secretary. Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern for your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military force and keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and concentrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you. Yeah, this is all unfolding so quickly. How did no one figure out that this was a performance? Announcer. You have just heard from the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here is a special bulletin from New York. Cables received from English, French, German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on planet Mars. Majority voice opinions that enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north towards Somerville, with population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use. Although advancing at express train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here is a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder, similar to the first, embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morrisontown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up second invading unit before cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up position in the foothills of Watchcon Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morrisontown. Machines are sighted by telephone operators east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainsfield. Here's a bulletin from Winston Field, Long Island. A fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run special wires to the artillery line with adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing army. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery located in Watchcon Mountains. Officers. Range, 32 meters. Gunner, 32 meters. Officer. Projection, 39 degrees. Gunner, 39 degrees. Officer. Fire. Boom. Observer. 140 yards to the right, sir. Officer. Shift range, 31 meters. Gunner, 31 meters. Protection, 37 degrees. 37 degrees. Fire. Boom. A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it. Officer. Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters. 30 meters. Projection, 27 degrees. 27 degrees. Fire. Boom. Observer. I can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off a smoke. What is it? A black smoke, sir. Moving this way. Lying close to the ground. It's moving fast. Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift 24 meters. 24 meters. Projection, 24 degrees. 24 degrees. Fire. Boom. Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer. Get the range. 23 meters. 23 meters. 23 meters. Projection, 22 degrees. 22 degrees. Army bombing plane, V-843, off-bound New Jersey, Lieutenant Vaught, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Vaught, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machine now in sight. reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine is already crippled, believed hit by shell from Army gun in Watchgun Mountains. Guns now appear silent, a heavy black fog hanging close to the earth, of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards, and we'll be over the first. 800 yards. 600. 400. 200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Yum. Green flash! They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop them down, planes and all. We're diving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. 8. Operator 1. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please. Operator 2. This is Langham Field. Go ahead. Operator 1. 8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of... Operator 3. This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas masks useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use Route 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard. Operator 4. 2X2L, calling CQ, 2X2L, calling CQ, 2X2L, calling 8X3R. Come in, please. Operator 5. This is 8X3R, coming back at 2X2L. Operator 4. How's the reception? How's reception? Okay, please. Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you? Dong, dong, dong. Announcer. I am speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island. Hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army wiped out. Artillery, air forces, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here to the end. People are holding service below us, in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor. All manner of boats overloaded with fleeing population pulling out from the docks. Doot, doot. Streets are jammed. Noise in crowds like New Year's Eve in city. Wait a minute. Enemy now in sight above the Palisades. 5 great machines. First one is crossing river. I can see it from here, wading the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. A bulletin's handed me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. 1 outside Buffalo, 1 in Chicago, St. Louis. Seems to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shores. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is even in the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke's coming out. Black smoke. Drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running towards the East River. Thousands of them dropping like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It reaches Times Square. People are still trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, 100 yards away. It's 50 feet. Fall down. Alright, operator 4. 2X12 calling CQ. 2X12 calling CQ. 2X12 calling CQ. New York. Isn't anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Is there anyone? 2X12, announcer. You're listening to a CBS presentation of Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in an original dramatization of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. Doodle-doo. Again, they do make pauses to let you know this is a performance, it's not real. So that makes it even funnier that so many people thought it was real. Have a little sip of wine. By the way, you might hear a little rattling noise in a few minutes. That's just my cat's automatic feeder. Oh yeah, the book fest. Pearson. As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I have been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present, furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with a professor who lives at Princeton and who, on the night of October 30th, glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself shall preserve human history between dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movement of the stars. But to write, I must live, and to live, I must eat. I find moldy bread in the kitchen, and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time, I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet stream, as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner of his huge metal legs, nearly brushing against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning. Sun streams in the window. The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though the black snowstorm has passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to the road. No traffic. Here and there a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them, and I keep careful watch. I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him in wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at the moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field. Beyond, the charred ruins of a dairy. The silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. Next day, I came to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant hand sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of its hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Newark, undemolished but humbled by some whim of advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man armed with a large knife. "Stop. Where did you come from?" Pearson. "I come from many places. A long time ago from Princeton." Stranger. "Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill." "Yes, Grover's Mill." "There's no food here. This is my country, or county, or country. All this end of town down the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?" Pearson. "I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people." Stranger. "What was that? Did you hear something just then?" Pearson. "Only a bird." "A live bird!" Stranger. "You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl into this doorway and talk." Pearson. "Have you seen any Martians?" Stranger. "Nah. They've gone over to New York. At night the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight you can't see them. 5 days ago a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning how to fly." Pearson. "Fly?" Stranger. "Yeah, fly." Pearson. "Then it's all over with humanity." Stranger. "There's still you and I. 2 of us left." Stranger. "They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost 1 machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked." Pearson. "Where were you?" "You're in a uniform." Stranger. "Yeah, what's left of it." "I was the militia, National Guard." "That's good. Wasn't any war any more than there's war between men and ants." Pearson. "And we're eatable ants. I found that out." "What will they do with us?" Stranger. "I thought it all out. Right now we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run, but they don't keep doing that. They'll begin chasing us systematic-like, keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet." Yep, that's the automatic feeder. That thing is looking a little wonky. I'll have to fix it later. Stranger. "Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet. Bothering them with guns and such stuff, and losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. Now instead of our rushing around blind, we've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress, done." Pearson. "But if that's so, what is there to live for?" Stranger. "Well, There won't be any more concerts for a million years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up. Pearson. And what is there left? Stranger. Life. That's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either and tamed and fattened and bred like an ox. Pearson. What are you going to do? Stranger. I'm going on, right under their feet. I've got a plan. We men as men are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we've got a chance. And we've gotta live and keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see? Pearson. Tell me the rest. Stranger. Well, it isn't all of us that were made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running wild and catching their commuter train in the morning, of fear if they'll get canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice, roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. After a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught. This is some interesting commentary. Pearson. You've thought it all out, haven't you? Stranger. You bet I have. And that isn't it. These Martians will make pets of them, train them to do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And maybe they'll train us to hunt. Pearson. No, that's impossible. No human being. Stranger. Yes, they will. There's men who'll do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, why... Pearson. In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth? Stranger. I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers under New York, about our miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, eh? And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. That rubbish. Out. Pearson. And you meant me to go? Stranger. Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I? Pearson. We won't quarrel about that. Go on. Stranger. And we've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, but men. Men who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians, we'd turn it on men, we'd bring everybody down to their knees. Pearson. What's your plan? Stranger. You and me and a few more of us, we'd own the world. Pearson. I see. Stranger, fading out. Say, what's the matter? Where are you going? Pearson. Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. So, is this the whole thing? Okay. Pearson. After parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel. I entered that silent tube anxiously to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the grating of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught a sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in its jaws, and a sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue, and a pack of starving mongrels at its heels. He made a wide circle about me, and as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor, I walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark, past the shooting gallery, where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. From over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 16th Street. From there, I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their great steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabited those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to an immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all man's defenses and failed, by the humblest thing that God and his wisdom put on this earth. Yeah, bacteria killed the Martians. Before the cylinder fell, there was a great persuasion that through all of the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind, of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve to them and not to us. Is the future ordained, perhaps? Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this chapter of the record, begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to see from my window the university's spires, dim and blue through an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling in the garden, where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day. Orson Welles. This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So, goodbye, everybody, and remember the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween. Announcer. Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations, coast to coast, have brought to you The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air. Next week, we present a dramatization of 3 famous short stories. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. Okay, so that did not take long to read at all. Fake radio war stirs up terror through the U.S. So, yeah, it's a fairly fun radio broadcast, and I'm pretty sure someone with a much better knack for voice acting and dramatization would act that out better than me. But yeah, this is an interesting take on the book. Well, since we got so much time left on our hands, let's see if we can find a couple of videos related to the topic. Right. Yeah, the radio broadcast was not that long at all. Again, the broadcast itself wasn't even an hour long. Did they all really think that all that happened in the span of an hour? Kid history. Radio broadcast. How about impact? Alright, how about this? The weird history, the story behind War of the Worlds.
In 1938, Orson Welles and a group of actors interrupted a radio broadcast to warn the public that the planet had been invaded by aliens. While they were really just reading a script based on H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds, the fake news story spiraled out of control and plunged the entire country into a state of mass hysteria. Or did it? Today, we're going to take a look at the original War of the Worlds broadcast. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other famous broadcast topics you would like to hear about. Now, who shall dwell in these worlds if they be inhabited? Are we or they lords of the world? And how are all things made for man? While classic films like Citizen Kane, The Magnificent Ambersons, and Transformers the movie were
Again, it was Halloween. How did they not realize that this was a gag?
still on the horizon for Orson Welles in 1938, he was already a respected actor, director, and storyteller. So it shouldn't have come as much of a surprise to anyone that he was just spinning a Halloween yarn when he took to the radio on October 30th of that year to announce that aliens had landed on Earth and were attacking New York. But apparently, it did. In reality, the broadcast, which started at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, was the product of Wells's Mercury Theater group. The story they told placed the start of the invasion at Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Why there? Well, turns out Mercury Theater playwright Howard Koch picked the location at random off a map that was hanging in a gas station he stopped at while driving to his parents' house.
Works for me.
But it was unlikely details like that which made the whole thing so believable to so many. The narrative claimed that the Martians had walking war machines that fired heat rays at the human beings who came to see their crash site. They then easily killed 7,000 National Guardsmen. The U.S. military subsequently attacked with artillery and bombers, but the Martians were unfazed and responded by releasing toxic gas into the air. The invasion then continued as more Martians landed in Chicago and St. Louis. The use of sophisticated sound effects, coupled with the Mercury Theater troops' terrifyingly realistic performances as radio announcers and witnesses to events, gave the whole thing a verisimilitude that convinced many it was the real deal.
Imagine being so good at your job that you convince people of the most ridiculous thing.
Since the broadcast, some reports have claimed that thousands of people spiraled into a panic at the announcement of the alien invasion, and some commentators have even hiked those numbers up to nearly 1 million. One of the more widespread rumors was that thousands of New Yorkers flooded the streets to see the invasion firsthand. It seemed Welles's decision to pepper the broadcast with fake radio reports from the U.S. Infantry and Air Force had upped the tension almost too effectively. The town of Grove...
Yeah, if you make it sound official enough, anybody would believe it.
Grover's Mill, New Jersey, took the brunt of the panic, with its residents reportedly being led to believe their water tower had been taken over by aliens. Some reports even have citizens trying to shoot at it in order to protect themselves from the Martians. While the truth behind those reports can be difficult to discern, some people were certainly taking the potential dangers of the broadcast seriously, namely, the police. One actor from the Mercury Theater group, Stefan Schnabel, later recalled the studio slowly filling with policemen bent on stopping the broadcast. They struggled with Pages and CBS executives who held them off until the show could be completed. After it was over, the studio phones rang off the hook. Paul White, then head of CBS News, described the scene as bedlam. Amusingly, he also ran into a disheartened Orson Welles. The future director of Citizen Kane told him, "I'm through," and seemed to believe that after this, he would be washed up.
I mean, YouTubers have gotten famous for less, so I wouldn't say that.
Today, many take it for granted that the famous broadcast caused mayhem in the streets and even cost some people their lives. However, despite numerous newspaper reports of widespread panic in various cities, it probably never happened on anything close to the scale portrayed in the urban legends. According to modern researchers, the vast majority of those who were tuned in recognized that the broadcast was merely a Halloween prank. One tip-off was that the broadcast was preceded by a voice on the radio saying, "The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater."
Yeah, it's like they announced it both at the very beginning, middle, and end that it was a performance, so they should have been able to pick up on that.
On the air in War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. There was also the fact that no other stations were carrying the news of the alleged alien invasion. Wells probably never meant the broadcast to cause panic either. He was working off a script that should have been recognizable to anyone who had read H.G. Wells's classic book. In addition, CBS required Welles to announce that the broadcast was fiction, both before and during the act. You had to be working pretty hard to miss all that. Hey, Weird History viewers, if you have trouble sleeping, listen. In this weird world,
I mean, we've seen people nowadays who jump to the weirdest conclusions based on a sketchy Facebook post, especially during the COVID era. So it's not too unbelievable that so many people missed that it was a performance. But still, yeah, it should have been obvious. And this is a commercial, so we are going to...
So, if there was no Great War of the Worlds panic, why do we think there was? Well, one big reason why the ridiculous rumors became so widespread was because various major newspapers, such as the Chicago Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Boston Daily Globe, gleefully reported the supposed panic. You see, the newspapers, who were the traditional carriers of the news, were eager to discredit radio, which was a fairly new medium at the time.
So, newspapers have been trying to take down other mediums since the 30s. Well, at least they are consistent about their behavior.
They also had a specific bone to pick with radio, and that bone was money. Turns out, radio advertising had attracted some of the monies that had previously been spent on print advertising during the Great Depression. The shift was extremely detrimental to the newspaper industry. When Wells's broadcast rubbed some folks the wrong way, the newspapermen made every effort to fan the flames and portray radio as an unreliable source of news.
It wasn't even news. So what I'm getting is, there was some panic, but it wasn't nearly as big. And the only reason we think it was that big is because newspapers got jealous of the popularity of radio, and they wanted to discredit radio so hard they spun this narrative.
They sensationalized the story and played up the idea of radio causing a panic in order to convince potential advertisers that the new medium was unreliable and their money was better spent on print ads. Despite reports by Radiolab that claimed 12 million people were listening to Wells's broadcast and that 1 in 12 believed the story of an alien invasion, an investigation by Slate found that of the 5,000 households interviewed about the broadcast, under 2% were actually tuned into the War of the Worlds. It wasn't surprising that so few people were listening to Wells's broadcast. It competed directly with one of the most popular national programs at the time, namely ventriloquist Edgar Bergen's Chase and Sanborn Hour, a comedy variety show.
Oh my gosh, that's like nowadays someone, like all these people just ignoring the dramatization of a streaming version of War of the Worlds because they wanted to watch Young Sheldon, and then the media trying to blow it up as something way bigger than it was.
PBS documentary on the subject agreed, saying that even though tens of millions of Americans were listening to their radios that night, not many of them were listening to the War of the Worlds when it began, because of the comedy show's popularity. Apparently, Wells did not predict the outpour of panic, or the widespread rumors of panic in any case. Turns out, he just wanted to conduct a bit of an experiment. The alleged point was to teach the American people a lesson about not believing everything they hear on the radio. According to Wells, we wanted people to understand that they shouldn't take any opinion pre-digested, and they shouldn't swallow everything that came through the tap, whether it was radio or not.
That's an interesting way to go about that lesson.
But as I say, it was only a partial experiment. We had no idea the extent of the thing. A valuable and important lesson, no doubt. After it surfaced that many of the reports of panic were falsified or exaggerated, there was plenty of backlash, probably because it didn't make America look too great or too smart. Even Hitler threw in a comment about the hoax. Yeah, that's right. The man who ruined the name Adolf Hitler, himself spoke out about the rumored panic of the American people, calling it evidence of the decadence and corrupt condition of democracy.
So this is a fascist dictator who was pumping out all sorts of propaganda. Oh my gosh. That's like a pit bull calling a chihuahua dangerous.
Who knew Hitler was an entertainment critic?
Hitler was a lot of things.
The government agency in charge of watching over the public radio waves was, and still is, the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC. And after the alleged War of the Worlds panic, they did, in fact, investigate the circumstances surrounding the broadcast. Ultimately, however, they concluded that no laws were broken. This is the biggest key to debunking the myth that the broadcast stirred nationwide hysteria. If it had triggered mass panic, the FCC clearly would have had more of an issue with Orson Welles than it did. In fact, the FCC found so little wrongdoing on the part of Welles and CBS that they even went so far as to prevent complaints about the program from being used in license renewal hearings, which was basically their way of declaring the panic was just a myth. If Welles was concerned his career would be affected, those fears, to say the least, turned out to be unfounded. Welles went on to have an immensely successful Hollywood career, maybe even partly thanks to the publicity garnered from his 1938 stunt.
In their determination to destroy They have only strengthened their enemy's resolve.
Or because he was one of the most talented directors in Hollywood. Could be either. The War of the Worlds may have stirred up controversy and gossip, but it was not the first radio hoax. In fact, it missed that honor by over a decade. Turns out, 12 years earlier, in January of 1926, the BBC was subject to an interruption during a discussion of 18th century literature. The 12-minute interruption claimed that there were intense riots all around London. They then falsely reported that Big Ben had been blown up, a politician had been lynched, and a hotel burned to the ground. The most fascinating part? The script was written by a Catholic priest. While this man of the cloth may have beaten Orson Welles to the radio hoax punch, he did not, as far as we know, go on to direct any of the greatest movies of all time. We've all heard...
I wonder if he did it in the same... if he had the same reasoning as Orson Welles did to teach the British people don't trust everything on the radio. I'm guessing as a priest, he's probably had to deal with a bunch of his parishioners believing false rumors they hear on the radio or in the newspaper, and maybe he also was trying to, like, in his own way, teach the people, hey, you can't trust everything you hear. You have to use your critical thinking skills. Or maybe he was just a troll.
Heard that life imitates art, and sadly, it sometimes imitates urban legends about art. For although the reports of mass panic and hysteria after Welles's broadcast turned out to be untrue, they certainly came true after a similar script was performed on the radio in Ecuador. In 1949, Eduardo Elcarez and Leonardo Paez produced a Spanish-language version of Welles's 1938 script. After it was broadcast, panic erupted, which soon exploded into riots and chaos in the streets. At least 7 people were killed, including Paez's own girlfriend and nephew. Both the radio station...
Why is nobody talking about that? Like, that one sounds way worse than what happened here in the States. Holy crap! Like, what the fuck, guys? I mean, I understand it's a completely different country, but wouldn't they have at least heard of the H.G. Wells story and immediately recognize it? Or maybe it was just condensed into America, and that's why they just believed it wholeheartedly, because they'd never heard the story before.
And a newspaper that fanned the flames of the hoax were burned to the ground. Well, that escalated quickly. If you need help falling asleep, click the link. The first 100 people to download Endo...
Okay, so we learned a couple new things, and I'm surprised nobody has mentioned that other incident that sounded way worse. But, yeah. Let me know. I think, since I don't have much else to read, how about this? Give me 1 second. Took me a minute to find it, but remember how we did that episode of Solomon Kane a few days ago? Well, Robert E. Howard was not just a short story writer, he also wrote a couple of poems. They're more on the longer side. They're not like little short poems, coffee mug poems that you can find in any book nowadays. They were poetry specifically to spin a tale of one of his characters. There's a couple of them here. There's the Homecoming of Solomon Kane, a variant of it, and all that jazz. But there's another one in here called The One Black Stain. Let's put on a nice picture of Mr. Kane. Or how about about we put up Robert E. Howard's face, since he's the author. Boop. Come on. Down we go. Here we go. There's our boy. There's our boy. Alright. The One Black Stain, Robert E. Howard. Alright, Sir Thomas Dudley executed at St. Julian's Bay, 1578. They carried him out on the barren sand, where the rebel captains died, where the grim gray rotting gibbets stand, as Magellan reared them on the strand, and the gulls that haunt the loathsome land wail to the lonely tide. Drake faced them all like a lion at bay, with his lion head unflung. Dare ye my word of law defy, to say that this traitor shall not die? And his captains dared not meet his eye, but each man held his tongue. Solomon Kane stood forth alone, grim man of a somber race. Worthy of death he well may be, but the court ye held was a mockery. Ye hid your spite in a travesty, where justice hid her face. More of the man had ye been, on deck your sword to cleanly draw, in forthright fury from its sheath, and openly cleave him to the teeth, rather than slink and hide beneath a hollow word of law. Hell rose in the eyes of Francis Drake. Puritan knave, he swore. Headsman, give him the axe instead. He shall strike off young traitor's head. Solomon folded his arms and said, darkly and somberly, I am no slave for your butcher's work. Bind him with triple strands, Drake roared in wrath, and the men obeyed, hesitantly as men afraid. But Cain moved not as they took his blade, and pinioned his iron hands. They bent the doomed man to his knees, and the man who was to die. They saw his lips in a strange smile bend. One last long look they saw him send at Drake, his judge and one-time friend, who dared not meet his eye. The axe flashed silver in the sun. A red arch slashed the sand. A voice carried out as the head fell clear, and the watchers flinched in sudden fear, though 'twas but a sea-bird wheeling near above the lonely strand. This be every traitor's end, Drake cried, and yet again. Slowly his captains turned and went, and the admiral's stare was elsewhere bent. Then were cold scorn with anger blent in the eyes of Solomon Kane. Night fell on the crawling waves. The admiral's door was closed. Solomon lay in the stenching hold. His irons clashed as the ship rolled, and his guard, growing weary and overbold, laid down his pike and dozed. He woke with a hand at his corded throat that gripped him like a vice. Trembling he yielded up the key, and the somber Puritan stood up free, his cold eyes gleaming murderously with the wrath that is slow to rise. Unseen to the admiral's cabin door went Solomon from the guard. Through the night and silence of the ship, the guard's keen dagger in his grip, no man of the dull crew saw him slip in through the door unbarred. Drake at the table sat alone, his face sunk in his hands. He looked up as if from sleeping, but his eyes were blank with weeping, as if he saw, not creeping, death's swift flowing sands. He reached no hand for gun or blade to halt the hand of Cain, nor even seemed to hear or see, lost in black mists of memory, love turned to hate and treachery, and bitter cankering pain. A moment Solomon Kane stood there, the dagger poised before, as a condor stoops above a bird, and Francis Drake spoke not nor stirred, And Cain went forth without a word and closed the cabin door. So yeah, not too terribly bad. I mean, it basically is a short story told in a poem, but yeah, not that bad. I'm still working my way through the Moon of Skulls. I am going to get this damn story read, come hell or high waters. But anyways, I think we'll end the stream there today. I'll post a link to that video down below, and I'll post the link for the War of the Worlds transcript as well, and the title for the poem I just read. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's Slowdown Sunday. Let me know if you want me to do more of these where you can see the text on the screen instead of just me reading aloud to you. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next stream. I'll put up a poll of the next artist soon. Bye.